Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I want to talk about 10 slept on cards coming out in Vermilion Bloodline set 11. These are just 10 cards that I feel like people aren't talking about enough. Maybe some people aren't talking about the best applications for these cards. So if there's a card in this video that you like, and maybe I pointed out something you could do with it that's kind of interesting or kind of cool or kind of innovative to a deck, let me know in the comments below, and also let me know down below if there are any other cards that you think are being slept on in set 11. But with that being said, guys, if you are new here, definitely subscribe, hit that bell so you don't miss a video. If you want to help the channel out, there are many ways down in the description to do so. Number one, the Patreon, the Gemmy app, where you can get your one-on-one coaching with yours truly, as well as your cross-world competitive content. Also, Dex protection for your sleeves, binders, deck boxes, all that good stuff. Their quality is unbeatable. And finally, guys, if you want to buy or pre-order the cards you talk about in this video, make sure to use my link in the description to TCG Player. All that stuff helps out a great deal, guys. I do appreciate each and everyone who does that stuff for the channel. That being said, let's get started. So the first card I want to talk about is Ss4 Vegeta, Rise of the Super Warrior. So I think the jury is still out on blue in set 11. I think on paper, Ss4 Vegeta seems strong because of its consistent ramp, but in practice, getting there can be a bit tough just because there are some leaders that awaken really early on, and that can be a big problem for Vegeta. I think Baby is actually really good. We've been testing that a lot, on the team and whatnot. But I think when we look at blue, some of the cards are a little hit or miss, and Ss4 Vegeta, Rise of the Super Warrior is one of those cards in my opinion. Blocker, auto. If your leader card's mono blue, when this card's played, look at the top 4 cards of your deck, add up to 4 mono blue cards among them to your hand, then place any number of the remaining mono blue cards in your energy, and place any other remaining cards at the bottom of your deck in any order. So basically, you look at the top 4, any mono blue card can either be added to your hand or placed in your energy, and then auto at the end of your turn, switch this card to active mode. So a big 6-drop 30k beefy blocker that you can attack with and then restand at the end of the turn. So the thing with this card is, I think on the face of it, when you look at it specifically in Ss4, it's a little bit weird because yes, you can ramp to something like this, and maybe maybe in a standard scenario, maybe Ss4 Vegeta will get to this by like turn 4. Maybe I think turn 3 would be rather rare. So I think when you're looking at this in a deck like that, it's maybe not as appealing. And if you're playing like your typical blue deck with Zeno Unison, yeah, sure, you can get this thing on turn 5, assuming you're not ramping any other way. But one of the main uses of this card that we've tested and seems like incredibly good is in SS3 Reboot, believe it or not. I think that's a leader that everyone kind of revisits when new mono blue stuff comes out, because on the face of it, it seems like SS3 would be one of the best mono blue leaders because you get free energy ramp and you get free energy untap. But the crazy thing about this card in mono blue SS3 is that this is a turn 5 draw 4 that only costs you 3 energy. It's really crazy when you think about it like that, because you play it for 6 and then at the end of your turn you're untapping 3 to then make use of those cards that you either drew off Vegeta. You can't ever ramp in SS3, which is obvious. The leader restricts you to 6 energy and that's all you can get. But with Ss4 Vegeta, a draw 4 3-drop is actually really strong. So I think it's one of the main uses of this card. I think if you had to say what deck this card would be best in, I'd probably go SS3 Reboot, but I think it still will be decent in some of the other mono blue decks. But that was what I wanted to say about Ss4 Vegeta. Next up, we're talking about Vegeta Ready to Rumble. So there's a few things I want to mention when it comes to this card. Let's give it a quick read. So 4-drop 20k blocker, counter attack, negate the attack and play this card. Auto, when this card's played, your opponent can't attack for the turn unless they place one of their energy in the drop area. So what's so cool about this card? Well, comparing it to another card that's similar to it in set 11, we have Gohan Baby's Minion coming out, which is a 3-drop 15k, although it is a servant, so it'll be 25k on the field. And that card says your opponent can't attack unless they put one of their cards in their hand to the bottom of the deck. So 2 floodgate type of cards. One is a 4-drop, one is a 3-drop. So some people kind of look at this Vegeta and say, why would I ever play this when I can just play the Gohan? Like, yeah, maybe the Vegeta has a little bit more of a devastating effect, but the Gohan is cheaper to play, comes online earlier, and still has a pretty taxing effect, on its own, right? And that's totally a valid argument. I definitely do see that. But what I think, you should think about when thinking about Vegeta Ready to Rumble is, first of all, in the Baby deck, this is a 3-drop counter attack, and I think this thing will floodgate your opponent more than Gohan will in 99% of scenarios, because no one's really going to risk attacking and losing an energy, right? That's kind of the crazy drawback of this card, as where Gohan, your opponent can push through it, because if you really think about it, Gohan versus Topo pitching 1 card as opposed to pitching 2 cards is a big difference there. There's a big difference there. You're not losing nearly as much a card economy as you would for swinging through a Topo, right? But this Vegeta, if you lose your energy advantage, that can be absolutely backbreaking. So I do want to say this is a 3-cost negate in Baby. Maybe it'll be better in certain matchups than others, but I do think it's worth looking at. And then the other thing I want to compare this to is UI Goku the Unstoppable. People played that card in mono blue decks forever. I know it hasn't been in the format for maybe 2 or 3 formats now, but I don't want people to forget that was a 4-cost counterplay card that people were playing because it was vital in that given format. You know, dealing with barrier and deflect threats was a really big deal in that format. And I'm not saying Vegeta is like the perfect answer to any in particular card, but what I'm saying is when you're paying for a card like UI Goku the Unstoppable, it seems pretty justifiable that you can pay for Vegeta Ready to Rumble, especially for this type of crazy effect. So next up, guys, I want to talk about Gotenks Return to the Reaper of Justice. Unique activate battle. If your leader's mono blue Saiyan and you have a blue Unison card in play, play this card from hand in rest mode. What's really cool about this card is it is the freest way to trigger some of the blue unisons that we have, namely Ss4 Vegeta and SSB Gogeta. Those aren't the most popular unisons right now, at least for blue decks. I mean, Zeno is just a really strong unison in general, but it is cool to see there is a 0-cost, you know, 1 card from your hand that actually becomes a body on the board that triggers those guys' abilities to basically say your leader takes no damage while you have a Saiyan in rest mode. Really, really cool stuff. It might not be great today, it might not be great tomorrow, but I do think this is a card worth having and a slept on card in the set. Ice Shenron, the Cryomancer. We have a 2-drop counterplay. If your leader's mono yellow, play this card, and the card being played, it's played in rest mode. Pretty cool there. You can actually rest mode unisons with that effect. But the much more relevant thing is activate main, pay yellow, discard this card from your hand, play any Shadow Dragon with energy cost of 1 from your deck. This thing is coming out in set 11, and in Shadow Dragons, it searches any of your negative energy Dragon Balls. And, you know, for all the love that all this other set 11 decks are getting, I don't really see anyone revisiting Shadow Dragons. And I think this card, being essentially copies 5 through 8 of all your other negative energy Dragon Balls, especially your 1-star negative energy Dragon Ball, which is pretty much the one you want almost every single game. I think this card is absolutely huge for the deck. I don't see people talking about it enough. And people really thought that Shadow Dragons were going to take a big hit when Max Power Kamehameha came out, because it is a very generic answer to the Sin Shenron 9-drop, but that card didn't quite have the effect that a lot of people thought it would, because when you deal with that 9-drop, your opponent's still plussing 3 cards. You're losing your max power. They're literally playing a ball from the drop and drawing 2. And with this card on top of that, to increase their consistency, I think it's going to be very, very good. I think this is one of the other slept-on cards in the set. Piccolo Demonic Transformation, we have a 3-drop counterplay. If your leader's mono yellow, play this card. If the card being played is energy cost of 4 or less, play it with its skills negated for the turn. Permanent during your opponent's turn, reduce the energy cost of this card in your hand by 1. So this is basically the battle card equivalent to Dark Dragon Slaying Bullet. And what I love about this card is it's the battle card version, so it actually has combo power, and it's not reliant on you having a yellow unison in play. Sure, Dark Dragon Slaying Bullet has the ability to be used for no energy by pitching 2, but I don't really like when people call that free, because that's not free. Costing you card advantage is still costing you card advantage. This card takes less setup, does pretty much the same thing. I think this is a great card. You know, again, might not be great tomorrow, but will be great in the future. SS Bardock the Tenacious, 6-drop, 25k Overwhelm for 6 for 1 black. When this card's played using Overwhelm, your opponent can only tackle battle cards once during the next turn, and auto, when this card's played, you can't play copies of this card during your next turn. So black is essentially getting a Nimbus, which is really cool because black hasn't had any floodgate cards that work quite like a Nimbus or a Dormant Potential Unleashed. They have Protector of the People, but that's more just like a stacking sense being over time. That's not quite the same as like literally saying your opponent can't attack after this time period. So I think Bardock is a great card. I think Overwhelm 6 is a little bit steep, but I'm actually pretty certain, just based on Vegex's design, I think we'll get leaders in the future that either, you know, mill more or somehow get more cards to the drop. And that's what they're trying to do with the Unisons, right? I mean, the Unisons, I think, are a little bit vulnerable because they don't have too much protection and they have really low power. But again, in the future, I think this card will be much, much better. Rebellion Hammer, black's first 2-drop extra card counterplay that finally stops the play of a 4-cost or less. This is something that black hasn't had, you know, ever in the game's history, and I still think it's kind of unfortunate they don't have a free counterplay with their Unison. But regardless, I mean, sometimes you just have to side deck the 2-drop extra card counterplay of your color. Like sometimes Denial of Hope is relevant in the side deck. Sometimes Preemptive Strike is relevant in the side deck. So now the fact that black has this card at their disposal and it could potentially cost 1, I think is a really great thing for black in general. Darkness Blast Stinger. This card's kind of cool. I mean, I don't think it's going to be, you know, a main deck slot in Dark Broly, for instance, but what's really interesting about it is, for one, it's a 1 energy 10k combo, which is actually sort of difficult to come by in Dark Broly, depending on your build. And besides that, though, it's a permanent plus 5k for the turn, so that's actually pretty cool there, that Dark Broly, in essence, gets its own sensu bean. Now, you know, there is a Protector of the People, which is a little bit more costly than this card, but maybe does the job a little bit better. But, you know, we have certain counters in the format, like Cooler and the new Baby coming out in set 11. So with that being the case, maybe you do want an activate battle timing for a card like this. That could be something you're going to want to consider. Mira Arcane Overflow. What's really cool about this card to me, and a card I don't see a lot of people talking about, is it's similar to the Android 18 that came out in Draft Box 5. It's an auto burst 3 when this card's played, draw 2. The Unit Absorb, you know, you build a deck around that, so that's like a whole different argument. But just as a generic card that I think is kind of slept on, this Mira is essentially a generic version of that Android 18, and it also burst 3, which actually can be beneficial if you need to fuel for sparking or need to fuel for Overrealm. I think that can be pretty decent. And the next card we'll talk about, guys, Demon God Deborah Dark Dominion. So I see builds of Majin Vegeta not playing this card, and I really do think you should find space for it, because with this card you can cut back on your Dark Dragon Ball. You can, instead of playing 4 Dark Dragon Balls and that's it, you can play like 2 or 3 Dark Dragon Balls and play 3 or 4 of this card, and this card searches Dark Dragon Ball from the deck for free just by pitching it. But what you actually have to do is remove a marker from one of your unisons, and with Dark Broly Unison, which you should be playing in the Majin Vegeta deck, this is a 0 energy investment, 0 card investment, because it replaces itself immediately, that your opponent really can't interact with, and it triggers Dark Broly to make your opponent discard a card. So that's a very, very, very strong effect there. I do want you guys to be aware of that. I do think it's another slept on card. If you're not playing this in Majin Vegeta right now, I do heavily recommend trying it out. It literally is just free card economy in every meaning of the word. So guys, hopefully you enjoyed the video. I do want to know in the comments below if you think there are other slept on cards in the set. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.